Welcome to episode 10 of the Leap Home, Honeymoon Express.
In this week's episode, Sam leaps into the body of a newlywed taking a honeymoon trip to Niagara Falls with his bride. Initially focused on avoiding sexual contact with this woman, Sam's focus is shifted when Al asks him to intervene in a government mission to prove to a committee in the present day that the project has value. Before he can act on this, however, his new wife's ex-husband boards the train with murderous intent. But can Sam save himself and his wife and secure the future of the Quantum Leap project? Or is that too much to expect of one man, whether or not he is guided by God?
Not the men's room again. Sam, I'm starting to feel like a pervert.
Good evening, Ian. How are things?
Not too bad, Gerry. Glad to be back for season 2.
Are you?
Absolutely.
Although in the UK, season 1 still,
Yes.
as we discussed or mentioned last week.
So, how are you feeling this week?
Bit like a pervert.
Same as every week?
Yep.
It's because you're a pervert.
If it walks like a pervert.
Talks like a pervert, that's for sure. Strong opening I thought this was to the new series to get onto the subject.
Yeah, it was good. A little bit of exposition for new viewers, I would have thought.
We get that in most episodes though.
Yeah.
In fact, I thought we got less of it. I suppose they kind of worked into the courtroom or the Senate scenes rather than just doing a dump at the start.
Talking
The way
about
you do a podcast.
talking about perverts, Al, I thought, was the least perverted out of the two this week.
2 weeks in a row, if you include last season's in the row.
Although I was glad to hear or see that they addressed one of the burning questions that we have had throughout the first season.
I think they're probably just responding to letters from viewers that they received in the break.
I think so. Although I'm not satisfied by the answer to the moral dilemma or Sam's defence.
No, it doesn't make logical sense when you work it through to its ultimate conclusion.
No.
Anyway, before we get into this, shall we do the usual?
Snapchat.
I just spoke to somebody on Snapchat from the official account recently.
What
I've logged back out now, it's fine.
Did you get a picture?
A sports themed picture.
Okay.
But yes.
I hope it wasn't. I hope it wasn't a picture of a tackle.
No, not that sort of sport.
Right.
People who want to get in touch, you're advised to use more mundane methods such as Twitter and Instagram, where we're at Leap Home Podcast, or Facebook, where we're at The Leap Home. I should remind people that they can get every episode on our website, theleaphome.com, or 1 week early on our YouTube channel, Columbo Podcast Productions. The other thing not to forget is that if you haven't had the opportunity yet, or if you've had the opportunity and not taken it, please head over to Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcast if it gives you this facility, and leave us a wee review, ideally a good review.
Next week, can we go live on Periscope?
No, unfortunately it's been deprecated.
Is it?
I don't know if that's a word.
Killed off.
It's gone.
Okay.
Shall we begin?
Let's crack on.
Actually, there's just some people on TV stealing your crack on catchphrase recently.
That's copyrighted.
I know.
Who was it?
It slipped my mind, but I just remember seeing it and thinking, that's ours.
Yeah.
Can't believe someone's using this.
I think Richard Herring does it.
I think it's Saturday Kitchen as well.
Right.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't think it's an egg pun.
Obviously, big fans.
I'm a big fan of Saturday Kitchen.
Are you?
It's the one programme that I religiously watch when it's on telly.
Dearie me.
Every Saturday morning at 10 when I wake up.
Anyway, we begin in a courtroom.
Oh, I think it's a Senate hearing.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it looks like a courtroom. It smells like a courtroom.
Al is being one of a few good men.
Yes, he's dressed up in his Admiralty finery.
He is insisting that after exhaustive research, he and Sam have concluded that God has taken over Project Quantum Leap in order for them to put wrongs right.
Which God?
Muhammad, is he a god? Allah.
Allah's a god. Muhammad's not a god.
No,
it's a prophet. That's why he's called the Prophet Muhammad.
Right, he makes a lot of cash.
No, that's a different type of prophet altogether.
Okay.
In fact,
Will I get in trouble for saying that?
Some kind of, yes,
Oh no.
condemnation.
Okay.
God apparently is now choosing where Sam goes, and Al explains to this committee of senators what Sam has achieved so far.
Yeah, he reads out some examples of previous actions, and although accepting that they are worthwhile, the senator suggests that they're hardly earth-shattering, as we have noted.
I've made that point. I think you've made that point as well.
Mm-hmm. Another member of the committee expands on this and points out that for the $43 billion budget, he could have at least altered the results of the last presidential election. Now, I'm guessing that would have been Bush Sr., early 90s?
88 he won the election, so yes.
Mm-hmm. Al at this affects a smile before trying to explain in more detail what has been going on.
Quantum leaping has left Dr. Beckett suffering from partial amnesia. He's unable to recall many significant events of his lifetime, and even if he were, he seems only able to impact people and events that he wants changed.
You expect us to believe that God elected Dr. Beckett back into 56 just to help Buddy Holly with the lyrics to Peggy Sue?
He works in mysterious ways.
Evidently, so does this project. Correct me if I'm wrong, Admiral, but do I understand that you are the only person who has had physical contact with Dr. Beckett since he supposedly leaped back in time?
Physical contact, no. We appear to each other as holograms. I can see and hear him, he can see and hear me, but we can't interact physically.
And no one else can see or communicate with him?
No, Mr. Chairman. The experiment was designed around our brain waves.
In other words, we have only your word that this quantum leap ever really happened. Admiral, you must understand that this committee cannot justify funding a project that costs $2.4 billion a year on the word of any single human being, even one as highly respected and decorated as yourself. Thank you for your testimony, Admiral. We'll caucus and announce our decision on Friday.
Bit of a exposition dump there, as mentioned.
Yeah, we covered that at the top. Al goes on to respond to this. He says that if they cancel this project, they will end one of the greatest adventures that mankind has ever embarked upon and will abandon Sam to his own devices.
However, the senator smugly responds that he's not alone, is he? As you told us. He's got God.
Whichever God it may be.
Yeah.
I think one of the senators argued about the gender of God earlier as well.
They did, yeah.
And Al said he hoped she was right.
Yes.
We get the credits now. Nothing spectacular, it's all season 1 clips, I think.
Before we arrive in a street in a housing.
A sort of suburban area. 1957, Sam's a fireman here.
A worried old woman tells him to be careful as he attempts to rescue a cat stuck up a tree.
Yes, Al is there, tells him that Ziggy says he has to make a heroic rescue, which they realise probably means this cat.
Al's quite unimpressed, isn't he, with what Sam's up to? He doesn't think it's...
Well, I think off the back of that committee hearing, he's thinking this is just nonsense.
And it is nonsense. You can't be... This project can't be about you saving cats.
No, Sam's now dedicated however long he's been in 1957 to this pointless act.
So he asks him if he knows who Fidel Castro is, but as he doesn't come to power for another 2 years, Sam obviously doesn't.
And that's not why Sam doesn't remember, it's because he's got holes in his memory.
Yeah.
He's from the future. Doesn't matter when he comes to power.
Precisely.
Anyhow, Sam, as you say, has no idea. At this, the cat, which I presume can see Al, because we've established that animals can see holograms, gets startled, jumps out the tree, causing Sam to fall. Fortunately, as the object with the greater mass, he falls faster, and the cat lands on him.
A greater mass doesn't fall faster. That's been established. I think that's basic physics, is it not?
I don't know. What falls faster?
I think it's one of these things. That's a well-known experiment.
Terminal velocity that you can't
if you knock anything, if you put a golf ball or a small, leaving aside wind resistance. If you drop a table tennis ball or a golf ball off the end of a table, they'll both hit the ground at the same time.
So what you're saying is what happened here was impossible, unless the cat was way higher up the tree than Sam.
Yeah.
We'll add it to the list of problems.
Okay.
Anyhow, Sam saves the cat in this way. The old woman calls him her hero, and he leaps
onto a train.
I mean, that sounds more impressive than it actually was.
No, he's not a cowboy. He's inside the train, but it doesn't bode well for our creepy hero, as he finds himself holding a woman who he is kissing. Quite
passionately. Or at least she's kissing him.
They are interrupted by a porter who laughs as he notes the nickname of the Niagara Falls bound engine.
Yes, the Honeymoon Express.
And we find that she is keen to remain in the room. She's very amorous in this episode. She's quite happy to spend her time physically with her husband.
Indeed. I think the porter says something about having seen more than kissing on the train. So
I'm sure he has. He's walked in and all sorts going on.
Add him to the list of perverts.
Yeah, but at least he doesn't...
He can cover it up pretending he's working.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose, like a window cleaner, I'm sure they've seen all sorts.
I'm sure there's 1970s movies about that. Anyhow, the young lady asks the porter how he knew they were newlyweds, and he points to their luggage, the rings that they're wearing, and a gleam in the gentleman's eye.
I would say it's more a gleam in her eye.
In this case, perhaps.
In any case, champagne is ordered.
Well, there's a bit of a dispute, isn't there, about where they're going to have their dinner?
Yeah, as I said, she wants to stay in the room. Sam would rather take it to the dining carriage.
Because he wants to not be left alone with her.
Yeah.
As we're about to get about an hour's worth of content about. Sorry, he reluctantly agrees to this champagne being brought to the room, but then chases after the porter, asking him to bring a newspaper and make up single beds so they don't have to sleep in one bunk together.
So before we get to one of the main themes of this episode, in some cases he wouldn't be expected to do the deed. However, when you're on your honeymoon, it's going to really affect the relationship if you don't do what's expected of someone on their honeymoon.
Yeah, it's going to cause her to
question the...
Well, at least have questions for the guy, or if not completely damage their relationship.
Yeah, and we've said it before, it sort of reminds me of the episode with Dixie, the stripper and the boxer.
Yes, where we assumed that he did, because there was no...
Not just that, but we assumed that their relationship was very physical. But the way they acted, it was, I'd imagine they're getting down to it all the time. And if you suddenly don't do that, it's more damaging, I think, to not do it.
And then we had the final episode of season 1, when he would have done it, given half a chance with...
Yes, Claudia Christians.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quite clearly he was very much up for that.
Choking for it.
So I don't know where he suddenly gained this new moral clarity from.
No, and his morals go very much askew later on. And I said there a moment ago, he's a bit creepy, Sam, I have to say, so far.
Yeah. Yeah, well, yes, I agree. Anyhow, we get a wee exterior shot of the train, and a caption tells us it is...
27th of April,
1960.
Yeah, so you took that note this week. Brilliant.
Me.
Okay. I liked the shot of the train leaving the city.
Yes,
quite a few exterior shots. Just I
liked all the exterior shots. I like trains.
Do you?
Not that much.
No,
but they were good shots.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, back inside, Sam again tries to avoid even kissing his new wife by nipping into the toilet, where he discovers he is a police officer with a gun and handcuffs, which he's not quite sure why he's brought on honeymoon.
Bit of a kink, obviously.
Well, he thinks that, and then suddenly chastises himself for thinking like Al. When he emerges from the toilet.
No, I think he chastises himself because he glances through and he has a little peek at his wife undressing or doing whatever.
Yeah, but I think he also has the handcuffs in mind.
Do you think so?
That was my
okay. Well, that's up to you, Ian. However your mind travels, wanders. That's...
He's the one that's asking, why have I brought these?
Yeah.
And then anyway.
Oh, mm-hmm.
Maybe it's a completely separate thought. It could be a completely separate thought.
No one's judging you. No one's judging whatever your thing is.
We all know that he's a passive pervert. So
no, he's not even a pervert. He's just creepy.
Yeah.
Like Al's a pervert, but he sort of feels as if
I'm not sure the use of handcuffs is perverted.
It's not. It's not. No. Well,
unless,
clearly,
yes, there's no consent. In which case, it's a whole different question.
You don't have to defend yourself, Ian. Whatever you're into, it's
absolutely fine.
Yeah, consenting adults and all that sort of thing.
Exactly. We'll move on to supporting her dream.
Yes, he returns to the room from hiding in the toilet, and we see that he has packed one of her law books
Yes, she's got exams coming up and she's very pleased that she'll have the opportunity to study.
Yeah, unfortunately this earns him a kiss.
Yes, but he takes advantage of the opportunity to make her study right now.
It's weird.
I don't get why she's not more kind of, no, I'll study later.
And we can understand why Sam would want this book to be here, but I can't believe that her cop husband has packed the book.
Well, maybe he's very similar to Sam.
Well, maybe he has packed it so that he'll go in her good books. And
yeah, maybe.
But it's clear how she acts. He doesn't need to do this. She's up for it anyway.
Yeah.
They're just married.
Exactly. Anyway, Al has shown up meantime and points out that she's not interested in torts nor writs. But Sam tells him to zip it before refusing to give his wife a goodbye kiss and telling Al to get out of there while she does her dress back up.
Yeah.
Because it's all open at the front. She's got her underwear on show.
Yeah, I must admit, I thought she was gorgeous enough. I know who the actress is. She was in Beverly Hills Cop, and I fancied her big time.
Yeah.
You've probably got some trivia about her later on.
Absolutely.
Okay.
She took advantage of her looks to marry some Hollywood royalty.
Yep.
Anyway, we'll get to that.
Maybe it was her personality.
Oh, it's probably a combination, like in most cases.
Also, there was a nice sort of sexy sax score during this.
That comes back.
It does, yeah.
There's a lot with this episode that put me in mind of Columbo. This was
Columbo never had to.
No, but they've used that sort of sax scene for this woman's meant to be sexy, so we'll play a sax. I think they did it for Faye Dunaway, and they certainly did it for Sex and the Mad Detective.
Yeah, I'm just glad that you didn't suggest that Columbo was handcuffing Mrs. Columbo up.
I bet he was. Sam rants to Al in the corridor about the woman being a stranger to him while Al calls him a lucky dog. You would think she could hear, he's only closed the door.
Yeah, exactly. But also, it's never stopped him before. They're all complete strangers to him.
Yes. Suddenly he's got this issue.
Yeah, and Al, he can't believe that he's passing up this opportunity. I'm on Al's side in this one, to be fair.
Sam walks away and he actually literally whistles to Al to follow him like a dog.
They move off to another carriage where Al tells Sam that he is there to have an impact on an event that will have global importance.
This doesn't really ring true for Sam.
Okay, what is this event?
So in 2 days the Russians are going to shoot down Francis Gary Powers in the U-2 spy plane, which will prolong the Cold War by decades, and all Sam has to do is get President Eisenhower to drop the mission. Yeah.
So he's got to shoot down U-2. There's a lot of people out there today that wish that U-2 had been shot
Sam
down.
Asks. He says, do you mean the band?
Yeah. Saved
Apparently Bono himself hates that name for his band.
Really?
Yeah.
I've seen them once live in the Zoo. Is it Zoo TV? The Zoo tour or Zoo TV tour back in the 90s.
Okay. Were you impressed?
It was a good live show. Although I wouldn't say I'm a U2 fan these days. I wouldn't go and see them again.
Ever since they forced their music on everybody that had an Apple device. Anyhow, Al reveals to Sam that his new bride is the daughter of the Ohio Senator Brown, who's a golfing buddy of Eisenhower.
Al, however, does admit that Ziggy doesn't necessarily say that this is why he is there, which annoys Sam, as he believes that they should stick to the smaller individual issues rather than things that have the aforementioned global impact.
Eisenhower's got a local connection to where I come from.
Okay.
There's a big sort of castle country house called Culzean, just down the coast from where I was brought up. Mm-hmm. And it's got an Eisenhower suite because he stayed there when he came over.
There you go. Yeah. Very good.
Anyhow, yes, as you say, Sam is very sceptical and insists on going with Ziggy's idea that he should help Diane, which turns out to be his wife's name, pass her bar exam. Yeah,
I think he senses that Al has an ulterior motive.
He's not stupid.
No, he's not stupid at all. No, he's very intelligent, as
we'll hear more about that later. Yeah, Al suggests that he makes mad, passionate love to Diane, and then whispers in her ear that she's going to pass and she should tell her dad to get Ike to stop the mission.
He's very. He's got a lot of confidence in Sam's love making. I mean, what if Sam was not very good at doing that? And anyway, Sam is about to argue back, but Al promptly vanishes. And we're now in the passageway.
Yeah, Sam bumps into this porter again who's brought the champagne.
So he asked for the drink at dinner before being shocked to see a man roughly grab Diane from their room as she looks back and shouts for help.
Yes, and after a short exterior shot, we see that they've stopped at a red light in Harlem, apparently.
Yeah.
Sam draws his gun on this man and pulls Diane away.
Yeah, well, no, before that, the man pulls a knife.
He does, that's why the gun comes out.
So Sam, that's not a good thing. You pull a knife and he pulls out a gun.
Yes.
Bringing a knife to a gunfight, is that what they say?
Yeah. That's what they say. I don't know what to say about that.
However, the man seems fairly relaxed. I mean, most people would panic at this point.
He's cool as a cucumber. He says that he's her husband and she says ex-husband. He sounds a bit French.
He does. He pulls out a pack of cigarettes and we see him light one up with a distinctive lighter.
Yes, and he tells a story about a dream he had about mon oncle.
Yeah, this dream involved Diane making love to a Gestapo member, is that right?
Yes, and in the dream, the Gestapo officer looked just like Tom or Sam, except for the eyes, because that guy had eyes of someone who could kill. In fact, Sam does not.
And at this, he steps off the slow-moving train, and Sam, he points his gun at him for a few seconds, but of course doesn't shoot.
No, because he's not a man who would kill. Later on.
Yeah, back in the room, Diane is clearly distressed as she explains why her ex has never been mentioned.
You hate me, don't you?
What? No.
I didn't tell you I'd been married before because if I didn't tell you, then it didn't happen, at least not for you. And if it didn't happen for you, then I could pretend it didn't happen for me.
There's a weird logic in that.
You hate me.
I don't hate you. Look, it's 1960. Divorce is not unheard of. What is unheard of is being kidnapped by your ex-husband.
I should have known Roger would never let me go. I knew he was jealous when I started dating him. I found it flattering. I just thought he was being very French and that once we were married it would all end. It got worse. He made me a prisoner in my own home. We never went out. We couldn't have dinner parties or see old friends. He wouldn't even let me shop or get my hair done without him sending one of his bodyguards along.
Bodyguards?
Roger smuggles arms into Africa mostly. It's very lucrative, but it's very dangerous.
Well, didn't you know this before you married him?
No. I knew during the war he smuggled guns into France for the resistance, but I never dreamed it became his profession. He always talked about how horrible it had been, how everyone close to him had been caught and executed by the Germans, and how after the war he alone survived.
Diane, did you love him or feel sorry for him?
A little of both. I don't think I knew what love was until I met you. Oh, Tom, I'm so afraid to hurt you.
So Diane's a massive racist?
Certainly thinks the French have a way of behaving that is uniform.
And not in a good way.
No. Jealousy and rage.
Kidnapping.
Roger, interesting name.
Roget.
Ferrero, being his Christian name.
Mm-hmm. We head back to the Senate hearing.
Yes, Al requests and receives a 48-hour stay to allow Sam the time to prevent this U2 mission from ever taking place. And Al understands and accepts he will have to quietly retire if history doesn't change.
Yeah, I didn't really understand this. So Al explains about the changing the U2 mission and therefore changing global history. But they won't. He must know that if he does that, then
they won't know it had ever changed.
Yeah.
But then all of history will change. So how he won't know what will. Yeah.
So we're seeing time from two different perspectives here. But yeah,
we've got more questions about that later on. But the point you're making is borne out. Back in 1960, in the dining car for dinner, Diane is suspicious of a man she sees drinking a very French drink.
Yeah, she comes across a bit paranoid, but obviously, as we know, just because you're paranoid
doesn't mean they're not out to get you.
Exactly.
Sam points out that champagne is also French, so don't be so silly.
And he also tells her a tale about him as a 2-year-old.
This was a bit patronising.
Yeah.
You remind me of me when I was 2.
You stupid woman. And then he uses the champagne bubbles to try and predict the future.
He is manipulating her.
Yeah, but maybe for her own benefit. He's trying to calm her down.
Not just here, but the previous scene as well.
Sure. Well,
Yes.
but we've discussed this before. That's the thing. He's always manipulating people. He has to manipulate them to
Suppose.
do, to achieve his objectives.
Yeah. He reads these bubbles which say she's going to pass the bar, become a lawyer, end up in politics, and become the first president to give birth in the Oval Office.
And we also hear that Sam's mother calmed him down when he was on these journeys by giving him a book,
Yes, even though he was only 2.
which she laughs at, because
It's absurd, hey?
yeah,
Sort
it
of
would have to
child
be
genius
a
stuff.
child prodigy, yeah. And at this point, Al answers and states that yes, indeed, he was, and gives a few examples of his prodigious talent.
He says he was doing calculus by 5, which could be hyperbole or maybe true. Who knows?
I mean, basic calculus you could probably do by 5. You wouldn't have to necessarily be a genius.
What's the limit of your calculus?
That A plus B
Is that
equals,
calculus?
I don't know. Sine, tan, is that calculus? The graphs, the differential equations?
Honestly, I'll be honest, I don't know what calculus is relative to other bits of maths.
Okay.
I
Anyway.
don't know which bit's calculus.
I clearly wasn't a mathematical genius at any age.
I did fine up until the end of high school, but then I lost interest.
It's all about Google now. That's all you need.
Well, that's what you always thought when you were at school. I'll never need to know this.
And you don't.
We get the clip from the top of the show about Al feeling like a pervert when Sam makes him go to the toilet once again. But before they go, Diane has a promise for him.
Is that the seductive promise?
It is. Well, he's on a promise.
Yeah.
She says she's going to be in the compartment wearing something special once she's finished doing some girly things.
Yes, I wonder what those are. I cannot. Well, I can only imagine what you think they are. Well, your little fetishes that we've discovered tonight, Ian. Yeah.
I imagine it's just sort of basic hygiene things.
Really? Cleaning, polishing the handcuffs and the foot restraints with the bar, the ankle bar,
Perhaps.
and the gimp mask.
Well, quick wax.
Oh, what?
Quick wax.
All right. Okay.
Anyhow, she leaves first, actually, and then Sam and I'll go to the toilet anyway. Even though she's gone. And Sam mentions this kidnapping, but Al has no data because Ziggy's funding's been cut.
Yeah.
They can't do any more calculations.
Was that the point where Al talks about his numerous trips on this, or a similar train to Niagara Falls with his several wives?
Yes, he can't quite remember which wife it was. He spends a wee bit of time working out who was who and where he went on honeymoon with each one.
And we find out eventually that it was his. Was it third and his
First, third, and fifth, or second, third, and fifth.
And Sam makes a joke about that being odd.
Yeah. Oh, it must be first, third, and fifth then.
Yeah.
Sam gets upset thinking that nobody back home cares about him, but Al says that he cares, which makes Sam feel a bit bad. He apologises to Al. I suppose it's not that long since they had their big fallout.
Yeah.
And Al asks if he's arranged for the U2 mission to be cancelled. But Sam thinks he has bigger problems.
Yes, including the kidnapping and the fact that he's expected to perform his marital duties shortly.
Well, the two of them then get into a significant discussion on the morality of his sleeping with Diane.
Okay, so this is, I think, where we have the biggest issue in this episode. Al clearly doesn't think there's a problem at all. He should just do it, take one for the team, as it were.
Mm-hmm.
Take one for the project. But Sam's view, I can't get on board with. What is
it's
it?
completely different from what he said in the past. He says he doesn't love her, so he can't sleep with her.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense, yeah. So his position is that he can't sleep with someone who he doesn't love. Now, firstly, we know that Sam tends to fall in love with women within a matter of minutes.
Half an episode, usually.
Exactly, of meeting them. But that isn't the point. What your feeling is towards that woman doesn't change the moral conundrum that you have. You're not that person. It doesn't really make any difference. Like, if you love her, it doesn't change things. She doesn't, you either accept that you can do this or you should be doing this because to meet the objectives of the leap, or you don't.
Yeah. And what happens when the other guy comes back into his body? He's like, did you sleep with me in the last few days?
Yeah, well, we've discussed that at length already. But yeah, I just think Sam's thinking of it here. Like, you can't justify it by saying, well, I love her. Doesn't matter. There are many women I could say I love, but they wouldn't like it if I started making love to them. In fact, in many cases...
What are you talking about?
Well, my point is that it's not a one-sided thing. You can't morally justify an act of sex because one person in the relationship, has love.
So, if Sam sleeps with Diane, is that her cheating on her husband.
No, she doesn't know about it.
Well, does that change it? So if your wife had a twin and you slept with her thinking it was your wife, would that be cheating?
No, that would be a deliberate
A fetish.
Yes.
A lifelong dream.
Yeah. Anyway, let's not go down that road.
Anyhow, yeah, Sam does say that he is falling for her, which Al's not that surprised about, and tells him it's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
Not sure what he's thinking.
I mean, I tried to get out of that one before when the wife caught me. It's not a twin, yeah, but you look quite similar.
You both got brown hair. Back in the compartment, Sam has a quick pray, asks God if sleeping with Diane is what he wants, and if it is, to give him a sign, at which point she steps out of the bathroom in a negligee. However, yet again, and we've railed on this before at some length, he decides to reveal his true identity.
He is a moron.
It's the one thing he's been told over and over and over not to do.
How do you think this can be taken seriously? This is what year is it again?
1960.
1960. You've come back from the future. You know how people think. So here's another question as well. In the Sam's time, is this all out in the open? I'm thinking this is experimental work. No one would know about it even.
Yeah, because Al has to explain to the Senate what he's been doing.
Right. So even then, it's not an accepted technology. It's not accepted science by any means. This is at the very beginning of what. So he knows when he goes back in the 60s what their attitudes are. How do you think that they would possibly accept and believe what you're saying?
No, exactly. At best, they're going to think you're role playing, which is what she does think.
Yes.
Which is quite a nice twist on it, I thought. But he insists and doesn't engage with her.
But sorry, I'm going to continue here, Ian. It's not just that he'll look stupid or whatever. She wouldn't believe him. Let's assume that it did work and she did believe him. That knowledge in the 60s could change the entire course of history.
Mean that the project doesn't happen.
Anything at all. You can't be telling people back then what you're doing in the future. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Jeopardising jeopardising mankind.
That's a big take.
That's what it calls for. It calls for a big take.
Yeah, so she tries to play along with this role playing, but he goes back to his previous identity of Tom McBride, so I think he's going to go along with her at this point. But she suddenly stops and screams.
No, okay, yeah, she does. But before that, we need to point out that when he reveals his name, she asks if it's the playwright.
Yes, that'll come up again.
Why does she scream?
She sees Roger out of the window at a station.
She's worried for Sam, but he is going to go and tell the conductor so that Roger can be handed over to the police at the next stop. But they're only pulling into the station, so you could get this sorted out here without letting them get on.
Yeah, but he's too slow. Diane, however, is concerned because she has read cases that say the police may treat this as a domestic matter.
Well, not just that, but there's no proof of anything happening, so...
Yeah, he's not done anything.
Well, he has, but...
He pulled a knife.
But he can't prove it.
She thinks he's here to kill Tom, essentially, and Sam walks through the train, and as he passes the bar, the man with the French drink disarms him subtly.
Yes. A very nimble move. Impressive.
It was quite... There's a bit of Bond about this, isn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or this reminded me a little bit of a movie I've mentioned several times over the years. A little bit like The Sting.
Right.
Where Lonergan has his wallet taken from him before a poker game.
Right.
We're now in a communal carriage.
Lounge, yeah.
Sam finds Roger with his distinctive lighter and sits across from him as he starts a conversation about Diane and how he sees her.
You know, I was wondering, do you think Diane married you because you're a policeman? Maybe subconsciously she was seeking a protector, a blue knight. I asked my analyst about it this morning and he thought it quite possible.
What else did he say?
Regretfully that I was quite mad.
I would agree with that diagnosis.
I love her.
You want to possess her, that's not love.
She took a vow to love, honor, and obey until death.
She changed her mind.
She doesn't have that right.
That's no longer strictly a male privilege, pal.
You're not afraid of me?
No.
You should be. I'm going to kill you.
No, you're not.
Yes, he is. Tom McBride was found dead on this train. Stabbed through the heart.
Your lack of fear shows how little you know of me. Maybe I should tell you a little war story about a woman I used to know. She had a Nazi lover. And she gave him the names of everyone in our village who was with the resistance. The Gestapo caught, tortured, and hung them all. All but me.
You killed her?
Yes.
She didn't give them your name?
No. I suppose because she was my mother. Now, I think you do fear me.
Take him, Sam.
I feel like this guy could have been a Columbo villain.
Yes, I think so.
He would fit perfectly.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that.
The matching jackets, that'd be controversial. Al, as we heard, tells Sam to go for him to take him, but at this point Sam reaches for his gun and realises it's not what Al want him to do, shoot him in the face. Unprovoked.
Yeah, he says take him. What does that mean? Either a couple of things it could mean, but at the very best, I think you could be hoping that Sam just holds him there with his gun until
the police deal with it.
Yeah. Anyway, he is forced therefore to simply walk away.
Yes, and as they walk through the train, Al tells him that their best chance is to get the conductor to radio ahead as Roger is wanted for murder in New York, having killed the psychiatrist he was just talking about.
Yes, so he must have murdered him that morning, or else,
or lied about when he had the appointment, I guess.
Yeah. Quite easy to find him, wasn't it? Who's the killer? Look at the appointment book, the last person. Did you also notice that Al was wearing a tie with a miniature pair of spectacles?
Yeah, what was that all about? Is that just 90s fashion?
Yeah.
As viewed from the 80s?
Quite liked it.
Al tells him that he and Diane should lock themselves in their room, but if he does that, then the U2 mission won't be aborted and that'll ruin everything.
Why would that not be aborted? Surely if they're locked in the room, Sam's got plenty of time to persuade Diane what to do.
Because Al thinks they will leap as soon as they lock themselves in their room and they're safe.
Ah, yeah, okay. However, Sam isn't interested and insists that he is there to save her life, and a frustrated Al shouts that it isn't her, but him who is going to be killed. He's already told him that.
Yeah, Sam says he's not interested, and even if the project does get shut down, it doesn't matter, because they're no longer the ones who are leaping him, it's God.
So I think once and for all, this episode answers the question that we've had from the start about God and their beliefs. So they clearly are both believers in some higher being.
Yeah, but it doesn't explain who is making him leap. I suppose God could just be a metaphor for existence and time.
In any case, he storms off, but then immediately calms down and comes back to Al and concedes that if the project is shut down, Al won't be able to contact him.
Yeah, he gets a bit teary and says he's not sure he can make it without Al, but he knows what he has to do at this point, and he gives Al a wee holographic hug.
Yeah. And in fact, they discover that this is their last. The plug's about to be pulled at this point. This
might not see him again. Yeah,
definitely won't see him again. This is it. He's being pulled. The project has been closed down. He left this a bit late to reveal the seriousness of the situation.
Yeah, but he's hoping now that'll get Sam to go off and cancel the mission.
They could have done this about 2 hours ago.
Yeah, but Sam might not have felt the urgency. Anyhow, Sam walks away, and next time we see him, he's in his compartment with Diane, telling her what just happened.
He then takes the opportunity to ask her to contact her dad when they arrive, but there is a problem.
Yeah, that can't happen.
Why not?
He's away fishing and will be out of contact for a week.
He then knocks back her advances and suggests that she get changed as he starts to read from her law book as a means of quizzing her.
Yes, he says she should wear something more practical, but then pervs on her as she gets changed. And we hear perv music.
We do. Can't blame him, however. I mean, she's not he's not sneaking up, and he's not like peeking in through a...
No, they're married.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have a
sort
look.
of.
You wouldn't do that now. If someone's trying to hide themselves, that's out of order, but if someone's getting changed right in front of you, then there's not a lot you can do about it.
I mean, unless you've seen it before.
Or unless she's not as good looking as Diane.
Anyhow, up in the conductor's room, the conductor is attacked by the French guy with the French drink.
Yeah, he's knocked out, but this didn't seem right with me. He was knocked out and then just left in his room.
Yeah, I don't really understand
He
why.
can wake up within 30 seconds.
And what was the point?
So that he can't phone ahead.
Oh, so he's not getting to call ahead, okay. Yeah, because he runs to his room, so he must be going urgently to make the call.
So he knocks him out and leaves him there, but he could, let's say, he could wake up. It's not like you've given someone an injection and you know, that's him out for.
Yeah, and you walk off and leave him.
In the radio room.
Yeah. We see Roger rise from the seat where he had been all along.
Yeah, obviously preparing to make his move. So back in the room, Diane and Sam are studying, and as they do, he starts to stroke her face, and she decides that they have studied enough. What is he doing here? This is the beginning of it. So previously he was trying to avoid any intimacy.
Yep, and now he's fallen for her, so he feels he can do what he wants.
He's taking the lead here, and it gets worse.
Yeah, but he stops.
Why?
Because he thinks he hears something and then sees shadows under the door.
As we see the two men prepare to break in. However, just then the train comes to an emergency stop.
Yes, because Sam's pulled the emergency stop chain.
And when they burst in, it appears that Sam and Diane have escaped onto the tracks via the window.
Yes, and we think a wee action sequence, which is good for note taking.
Yeah, we should also say as well that the camera focuses on the fold down bed, which is now folded up.
Very briefly.
Yeah, so on the tracks, what happens?
Sam tussles with Roger, whose coat becomes trapped under the train's wheel, and his henchman Henri takes up the chase, shooting at Sam as he pulls his badge and gets the engineer to make the train start once again. That was the very short version.
Yeah. There was a few issues I had with this entire scene. One, that the train moved again after, a minute, 30 seconds. I think drivers have to come out and check everything to make sure.
Yeah, but Sam's pulled his badge and said, make it go now.
No, but before that, it started to go. That's how Roger get pinned to the track.
How was it still stopping?
Was it?
I think it was just coming slowly to a stop. Sam jumped out the window before it was completely stopped.
Okay.
I think.
In any case, when Sam tells the driver to move off, trains notoriously go very slow.
Yeah, I don't think he thought that fully through.
No, it's not a race car he's got here.
Let's go.
There's absolutely no way that these two assailants couldn't jump on. But it gets shot at. The other guy, his sidekick, tries to climb up.
Yes, but falls to his apparent death.
from a very
small step.
It's a nonsense. And then
Roger's got an even more bizarre way of getting up. This is straight out of a cartoon.
Yes, it's absolutely, or out of The Simpsons.
Something like that, yeah.
What do you call him?
Sideshow Bob.
Yes. So he lies parallel to the train, and then there's a very brief window where he can roll over and then grab onto the underside. Yeah. That's just asking for you to be.
It's pure Sideshow Bob. That's exactly what it is.
Pure bullshit is what it is.
Anyhow, having made his cartoon entrance, Roger is still an active threat. But on board, I didn't get this bit. Sam runs to the conductor and gets his gun and makes a comment about how old and crap it is.
It's not his gun. It's
the train's gun.
Yes, the train's gun, yeah.
And then goes back to the compartment where he tells Diane it's all over. So why did he need to get the gun for her?
Yeah, because as far as he is aware, both of those two guys, well, one has been mangled by a train that he knows about.
Going at 1 mile an hour.
Yeah.
It's a really slow death.
And surely he must have been watching until you build up enough speed. You'd be looking to see where Roger is.
You would have thought, but apparently not. Anyhow, Roger returns.
How did he return if you're hanging on underneath a train?
He came in the window.
No, but we saw him the last time. Yeah, he's hanging on underneath.
Round.
No, you can't do that. What's this nonsense all about?
He crawled under the bottom between two carriages, and he crawled up between the two carriages.
Oh, there you go. That's crazy.
Just let your imagination run wild.
Yeah.
Anyhow, he comes in. I think he must have come in either their window or their door.
Some sort of action man.
But he's behind Sam now and makes him throw the gun that he somehow knows he has now out of the window.
Yeah. At this point, Diane, she's quite calm, considering she tells him that if he lets Sam go, she will freely leave with him. Otherwise, she won't be taken alive.
This convinces Rosie that she truly loves Tom.
She's not thought that through.
And therefore he'll have to kill him. So she knocks his hand as he goes to shoot, And Sam turns around and stabs him in the gut.
Where did Sam get the knife from?
He must have taken it off Roger when they were fighting. In fact, we saw that, didn't we?
Did we?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Right. Yeah, so he stabs him to death with a knife to the gut.
Yeah, for no apparent reason.
Hmm.
He's already been...
So he's proven, you said, I didn't have the eyes of a killer. Who's laughing now?
Look into my eyes. Anyhow, we return to the present day.
The Senate hearing, where a sullen Al listens as we hear that the U2 mission did in fact happen and it was shot down, causing the world to be on the brink of war. However, he's not given up hope and tries to plead his case.
Mr. Chairman, I know we were unable to stop the U-2, but Dr. Beckett did change
Admiral,
history.
please.
He was able to save Diane McBride, and he still didn't leap, so
What the
it's
hell are
quite...
you trying to pull, Admiral?
I don't understand, Senator.
Are you talking about Senator Brown's daughter?
Yes, sir, Diane McBride.
Then your research computer goofed, Admiral.
I still don't understand, Senator.
It's true I was Max Brown's protege and was elected to his seat when he died in '65. So I can see how you'd believe by involving his daughter you might evoke some sympathy from him.
Mr. Chairman, I swear I had no idea you knew Senator Brown or his daughter. It just
Only
so
you
happened...
didn't research deep enough. Diane ran against me. She was the one I beat for this seat.
30 years ago.
Mr. Chairman...
Admiral, with all due respect, you lost. Now sit down and take your medicine.
Okay, a couple of things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, first of all, this guy, quite arrogant, assuming it's all about him.
Yeah.
Didn't like that.
No.
And there was another point, but I've forgotten now, so we'll move on. It'll come back to me.
We head to Niagara Falls.
Yeah, sorry, I remember. So the second point is, so in the original history, her husband got murdered. Roger survived, presumably kidnapped her, but she still went on to run for the Senate 5 years later.
Yeah, maybe she escaped. I mean, a kidnapping doesn't mean you're going to be held in a basement.
That's true. That's true.
So, Niagara Falls, in a hotel room, Sam tells God that he's done everything he had to leap, so he's now going to take his reward and he better look away.
The wind, presumably God, blows the book to a different page, and Sam asks Diana a question about constitutional amendments, which she gets wrong.
Does she?
She does. She says the 13th and 14th Amendment relate to actions by private corporations or groups against individuals, but really it's only the 13th because the 14th relates to state actions. And she says she can't believe it. That could have cost her exam. Bells go off. Of course, you originally failed the bar because of this mistake. He's fixed it. He leaps. Okay,
Yeah, that's a summary of this scene. However, there are a few things that are quite uncomfortable. As she is pondering through this book, he is stroking her, kissing her, trying to get down to business.
Yeah, he's totally on board now. His moral compass is swung.
And she tells him that she loves him, and he, of course, responds in kind.
Well, how long have they been? I mean, it's obviously, this isn't the first time since they got off the train, is it?
Yeah, but I'm not sure how long it took. It was a few days, maybe?
Yeah, so there's definitely been down to it more than once. But then he's talking about taking his reward now.
No, that was me who said that.
Yeah, but that's the implication of his little prayer, isn't it? That this is going to be the first time.
Yeah.
Unless he says this every time. It's like every day. It's like, okay, God, look away.
Yeah. Or maybe
go again.
Maybe just says that. God, if you've got a problem, if this is wrong, give me a sign.
Strike me down.
Nothing.
Excellent.
Okay, so after the leaps, we go back to the Senate hearing. What happens?
Yes, so the senator's about to shut the project down, but suddenly Sam's actions have changed history and he's not the senator anymore.
No, it's an old woman.
It's Diane.
Yeah, with makeup on, a bit like Marty McFly's mother.
She looks a much older woman. She didn't obviously fail the bar on this occasion. She extends their funding for another year and talks up the value of such projects.
And when the hearing ends, she asks Al if Sam is any relation to the playwright.
He says no, and she says this rings a bell for her and she can't quite work out where. She is going to have one heck of a shock when she figures this out.
Yeah, she does say that. She's quite a saucy little minx, isn't she? She says, I'll come back to me. I'm not sure where, maybe tonight in bed.
With her husband.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we see Sam conclude his leap, and he arrives in a sort of Bee Gees style outfit in the middle of a disco.
Well, it's a Travolta style outfit.
Okay, I would say Bee Gees.
Bee Gees music, Travolta style.
Okay.
I don't know, whatever. He's pulling the pose anyway.
He certainly is. Night Fever.
Yeah.
Yes, and that's the end of the episode. So, do we assume that only Al remembers the original history?
I think we have to.
And why does he remember the original history? Is it because of his brainwaves being tied to the Quantum Leap project? That'll do. Right. I like this actually quite a lot.
It was a good episode.
The train setting, it's appropriately claustrophobic for this sort of chase.
But again, we've mentioned this before, the sort of murder mystery, the murder on the Orient Express. It's a closed room type.
And the antagonist was a lot of fun. I really liked him.
He was good. Yeah, a little bit exaggerated, but fun.
What do you think Diane's going to do once she realises that Sam was possessing her husband during her honeymoon?
She seems like she wouldn't mind. She's up for it.
Yeah, she'll be pleased, maybe.
She loves all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
That's my fan fiction.
Any other thoughts?
So this was a season 2 opener.
Yeah, how do you think it landed?
I'm trying to think, if you are watching this for the first time, back in the day,
yeah,
it gave you all the information. It made Sam look like a bit of a pest.
It did a bit,
which he is,
of course. And you had the present day stuff. That's a bit confusing. You don't normally get that. It's a bit of a change of format.
Yeah, it's not typical, is it?
But it's just obviously, like you say, used to give the exposition.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like someone in the writer's room was like, oh, how are they going to get their funding extended?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, we better cover that in the episode.
Yeah. No, I thought it was a good episode.
Yeah.
Delicious.
An iconic look for Al.
Yes.
Okay, trivia. Originally aired on the 20th of September 1989, just 4 months after the end of the previous season. Directed the same as the previous episode by Aaron Lipstad. Hear more about him on the podcast for Double Identity. This was the last of his 3 episodes. It was written by Donald Belisario, so again we'll hold off on him for a future date. Diane McBride was played by Alice Adair, both in 1960 and in the present day scene. This was her only Quantum Leap appearance. She didn't have a long screen career, but she did show up in Miami Vice and Beverly Hills Cop 2. She was at one stage married to Josh Brolin, and they have a son and a daughter, and after their marriage she continued to live with him and raise their children together. I think she had another child from a subsequent marriage. She's only had one screen role in the last 30 years. She's now 56 years old. Matthew Carrière played Roger. This was his only Quantum Leap appearance, and somewhat ironically he's German. Born in Hanover, 1950. Most of his prolific career is in French and German language films and shows, so he's got occasional English language performances like this one, and he was in The Tunnel in 2013. He was at one time a high-profile activist for the German equivalent of Fathers for Justice, and was symbolically crucified at the German Ministry of Justice in 2006 to make the case for more rights for fathers.
Mm-hmm.
He's now 72 years old. He remains active. Hank Rolik played the porter. This was his only Quantum Leap episode, and perhaps most recognisable as the corner man for Apollo Creed in the first 2 Rocky movies.
Ah, right.
He appeared in many shows, including Kojak, The Incredible Hulk, and Murder, She Wrote. His final screen appearance was in 1991, and he died in 2002 when he was 75. Warren Frost played the lead senator who vanishes at the end. Again, this was his only Quantum Leap role, but he had a regular role on Twin Peaks and a recurring role on Seinfeld, as well as appearances on shows like Murder One and Ellie Law, and he was in the second Sister Act movie. He remained active right through to his death in 2017 at the age of 91. Fitzhouston, King Moody, Virginia Paris, and Kirk Scott played the other senators. This was the only Quantum Leap appearance for any or each of them. Scott died in 2013 at the age of 77, having appeared on shows like Dallas and T.J. Hooker, and he was in Heathers. Paris died in 2008 at the age of 73. She was in series including Chips, Barnaby Jones, and Quincy. Moody, who's an interesting one, died in 2001 when he was 71. He appeared in shows like Get Smart and The Man from U.N.C.L.E., but he's probably best remembered for playing a single role from 1969 until 1985.
Okay, what was that?
He was Ronald McDonald in every McDonald TV commercial.
Really?
Yeah.
That's good trivia. Now, the first 2 senators there, we didn't need that, Ian.
Well, you don't know which senator switched.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Anyway, but that is good trivia.
Fitzhouston, the last one, he's still alive. He's still performing. He was in shows like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, The X-Files, Seinfeld, and Knight Rider. He's now 69 years old. And finally, William MacDonald played the conductor. This was his only Quantum Leap appearance, but he also showed up in things like MacGyver, The X-Files, The Outer Limits and Riverdale. He has a website that offers hardcore acting guidance through online courses starting at just $4,000 Canadian dollars.
So,
if you're impressed with his performance, you can sign up at williammacdonald.ca.
I like a bit hardcore myself, so I might look into it, especially on the web.
In terms of other trivia, Ohio had not had a Senator Brown when this episode aired, but they have subsequently elected one. Sherrod Campbell Brown, elected in 2006. Despite what Sam and Diane revised, the actual legal points they talk about one man, one vote and so on, didn't apply until after this episode was set. So, yeah. Although, if you're listening to this in 2023 or later, they've probably been repealed. As you mentioned last week, viewers in the UK saw this, and again this week, so this is part of season 1. And in terms of things we learned, Al had 3 of his 5 honeymoons at Niagara Falls. He has a tendency to mix his marriages up, and Sam's a child genius. Yeah,
well, we can expand upon that. At least 5 marriages. We don't know if that was the end of it.
Did we not find out last episode that he had 5?
Can't remember. Sharon and Maxine were the 4th and the 5th. Sam thinks it's okay to bang people when he travels as long as he loves them. And the project, although it's obviously assumed, but it's government funded, but is in a perilous state, or it was.
It's very expensive.
Yeah. The government obviously are not fully committed to it. They don't know what's going on. It's one of these sort of shadowy...
I think what Al's trying to do is trying to point out it's a defence project. It should be funded from the defence budget, not the science budget, maybe. Next week, we have Disco Inferno, where Sam has to save a young man from taking up the family business. So we'll see you in 1976.
Until then,
cheerio.
Bye-bye.